This is fantastic to watch, but not what you want if you were one of the 9 players here.
No, you don't want this at all. This is like complete chaos, and it's like popcorn. Look what's happening. I mean, I'm talking and they're popping.
I have the best seat.
Absolutely.
Ladies and gentlemen, 'tis the season to be crazy. Am I right? The holidays are all about giving. And oh man, Survivor has been spoiling us. In lieu of the holidays, I'm feeling extra spicy and perhaps drunk on hype, and so I'm going to do a first on this channel by throwing at you 2 parts to this video subject. That's right, 2 parts, 2 videos, all the craziness, and I will never leave the editing suite ever again. Let's get down to brass tacks. I love a good tribal council. They cap off every episode with some of the sweetest climaxes that have been building up for the 45 minutes preceding them. No matter how dry an episode can get, I believe if you wow the audience with a good finish, they'll more than likely walk away satisfied, or at least that's what my last girlfriend told me. Tribal councils are perhaps the most important part of Survivor's structure as a TV show, so it's only fair that we spend as much time as necessary giving them the love and attention they deserve. Crazy tribal councils are absolutely the best to watch. So, you know what? Let's rank them.
I don't even know what to say.
Okay, oh man, cracking my knuckles, let's do this. I truly believe these are the 10 craziest tribals thus far in Survivor history. We're going to be counting down from number 10 to number 6. And part 2 is going to cover numbers 5 through number 1. So without further ado, here's number 10. A tribal council with no votes has to be at the front of mind for a lot of you out there for craziest tribal councils ever. And I think many would expect this one to be in the top 5 or even possibly number 1. The tribal in question is from the final 6 of Survivor Cambodia, when both Jeremy and Kelly played their idols on themselves, negating every single vote cast, meaning we have a tribal council with 0 votes. That's right, count them. Oh wait, you can't. The first and so far only time to ever have this happen, we ultimately wound up with the remaining castaways having to sit down and hash it out and decide if they wanted to send Kimmy home or Keith home, despite the fact that Keith received no votes at Tribal Council. As I've said in a previous video, you know your tribal is crazy when Jeff Probst has to pause the show, pull out a drawing board just to explain to the audience what the hell is happening on their TV screen.
One of the craziest tribal councils ever, and I know there are a lot of people at home right now and in the audience, even super fans, who are saying, wait a minute, what happened?
But I do want to explain why I have this at number 10. I want to say that while the outcome of this tribal council was totally ridiculous, I measured each tribal not just on the outcome of the vote or lack of a vote, but on the actual, the interplay between the castaways leading up to the votes. But what I love about this tribal is how going into it, Kimmy was playing this double agent role. She was trying to bluff her original alliance, Spencer, Jeremy, and Tasha. Almost right away at the very beginning of the tribal council, Spencer calls out Kimmy and is like, nope, not falling for it, Kimmy. He puts his foot down and draws a line in the sand and basically says, if you're not with them, you're against them, which was actually true. Kimmy was against them. Kimmy got pretty flustered, and I do think that the acting between herself, Kelly, and Keith was it wasn't great. They were trying to hide that the 3 of them were working together, but it was all very apparent. I guess good on Spencer for calling her out, but also bad on Spencer for maybe not showing a little more mercy given the situation. I don't have this tribal higher largely because the rest of the tribal councils on this list have even more going on from start to finish. The dynamics between the final 6 here in Cambodia are very tense, but I also don't find it very complicated. But don't worry, you could easily make an argument for this being higher, maybe number 1. If you do a good job enough, I could probably consider it. Number 9. Speaking of tense, can we talk about how amazingly loosey-goosey Tony was at the Merged Tribal Council of Survivor Cagayan? Indeed, that is the 9th craziest tribal council ever, where at the merge in Cagayan, we had Tony's alliance of 5 versus Spencer and Tasha's alliance of 6, with Officer Sarah kinda in the middle, but not really. If we're just being candid with each other, if you put Tony into any tribal council, you're basically upping the crazy factor by like at least 5 points. So I almost feel like it's a little bit unfair to every other tribal council out there to have Tony in a merge episode, let alone down in numbers, let alone with an idol being thrown around. Nonetheless, this tribal is amazing because you can tell Tony's side is trying their best to explain in the least subtle yet most subtle possible way that casts definitely should flip because, alliances aren't about just numbers, it's about who is in your numbers. And Tony's numbers are totally cooler than whatever those lame-o, braino tribe members got cooking. In this tribal council, there is just such a clear division, and the moment Tony reveals he has this idol, the whole set just explodes into chaos with whispers galore. Forewarning, this is the first of many, many whispers that I'll be mentioning in this video, so relish it while it's still new and fresh because I'm going to Tony. The moment castaways realize they can just call audibles and whisper to one another is the true game changer of the series. And it's in fine display here when both sides spend their time deciding if they should switch their vote or not due to idols being played. Amusingly, both Tony and LJ misplayed their idols, but it was all the same in the end, as Cass flipped on Spencer and Tasha, and, well, the rest is history.
Bang, bang.
Who flipped? Not me.
Cass.
Cass.
Number 8. Being set up as the culmination of two massive armies forming positions and marching on one another sounds really exciting. And yeah, it totally was. When we saw the final 10 of Survivor Millennials vs. Generation X go head to head in a 5v5 showdown for the ages where insults were hurled, whispers were softly spoken, an idol was played, and yes, the granddaddy of them all, a rock, was plucked out of a bag. In case you may have somehow already forgotten, this tribal council was quite historic for being only the third time in the history of Survivor where the castaways were completely deadlocked in a tie vote. None of them flipped, and so Lady Luck herself had to make an appearance when one unlucky castaway drew an off-color rock to RNG themselves out of the game.
I feel like one of those fruit bats back at camp. Like the world looks upside down right now. This is like the most chaotic tribal I think we've seen yet, or at least it's about to be.
The drama and tension in this tribal was palpable. It was incredibly raw and real. We had two alliances of 5 ready to cut each other down, but nobody was budging to flip. One of my favorite moments in this tribal council is when David just randomly straight up just asked for a roll call on the alliances, to which Brett and Zeke immediately lash out and then get annoyed at him. Then you get Adam and Hannah in the middle talking with Sunday about who they should vote for if they were to flip. Sunday bluffs them and says Ken, and so when David plays his idol, Adam's all like, yo, Sunday told me Ken, so it's gotta be Ken. And then it isn't Ken because obviously it wasn't going to be Ken. Sunday isn't that dumb. You know what? Good for you, Sunday. You deserve way more credit. There are whispers throughout naturally, and then we get the deadlock vote that leads to rocks, whereupon perhaps the most nervous, unsure if they want to actually do this person in the game ends up unfortunately drawing the bad rock and getting taken out. It's a huge risk to go to rocks, and I do think that had Jessica maybe flipped on her alliance, the game wasn't nearly as clear-cut as the numbers might have said moving forward. But still, Jess, if you're watching, I feel for you. We all did. Number 7. If there were ever a dark horse to make this list, I would say this next tribal council is just the perfect fit for that title. I'm talking about the final 9 tribal council of Survivor, San Juan Del, sure, why not? When we saw Wes Nail get taken out with only 2 votes to his name, whereas the other 7 votes, well, they were just thrown in the trash. Okay, not really, but they may as well have been since 2 idols were played and both canceled out the other 7 votes, leaving poor Wes to get the boot. Although I'm sure Wes was probably okay with this, given he was going to go straight to Ponderosa and get all of the wings he could ever dream of. This tribal is indeed the infamous, I say stick to the plan, tribal council, where Wes Nail's father, Keith, blurted that out and caused a major shitstorm of a ruckus. Really, this tribal is crazy, but I particularly love just how quickly it devolves the moment that Keith says that one line. Everyone has a reaction to it, and from then on, it's just Whisper City, conversations between multiple people trying to get on the same page, and overall, it's just a total clustermuck of confusion and telephone lines being crossed every which way.
I say stick to the plan. You know, at this point, that's all I can say.
Wow, John, stick to the plan.
This is the most confusing thing.
What made this setup so bizarre was how the Alliance of 5 and Missy, Baylor, John, Jacqueline, and Natalie wanted to trust Reed and Alec to help them split the votes to flush Keith's idol. But in reality, Reed and Alec intended to turn on the majority alliance, so once Keith blurts out his old infamous line, everyone perks up and just starts freaking out. And yet, even more hilarious than all of that happening is that despite all of this craziness, all of the whispering and confusion, the utter paranoia, the majority alliance of 5 still split the vote and voted the exact same way they intended to going into the tribal. They still mistakenly believed Reed and Alec were on their side, but Jacqueline and Natalie, however, they did not feel great about this, so they warned John to play his idol Stat. So he did, which ultimately saved the day. And then you get Keith asking his own son if he wants the idol instead of himself. Wes says no, it's all good. And so in essence, by Keith playing the idol on himself, he's sort of in a way voting his son out of the game, which is kind of similar to another person we may have heard of before. You know, thinking on Keith's stories across 2 seasons, he really gets put in dicey situations a lot. Number 6. This is one of my favorites, if not my favorite build-up to any tribal council in all of Survivor. I'm talking about the final 10 of Survivor Philippines when Jeff Kent gets sent home in a 5 to 4-1 vote, all thanks to, and likely unintentionally to, Jonathan Penner casting a single vote for Abby Maria instead of the planned Pete. How strangely poetic. For those of you who don't remember, this was the tribal where Lisa Whelchel blew up Malcolm's spot by revealing he had an idol to everyone, as well as where Abby, for some reason, revealed she had an idol as well.
Oh, just to clear the air. There's way too much chaos tonight. I'm not going home. So this thing's getting played. It's put a target on my back. I'm not dealing with it anymore. And if anybody's jumped on Lisa's boat and decides to vote for me, you might be in for a mean surprise in a second.
Penner was the clear target, but he won immunity that day, so everything went up in the air. Jeff Kent, Carter, Malcolm, and Denise were going to vote for Pete, while the original 5 Tandang tribe all voted for Jeff Kent. Now, if you're following along and doing the math, this left Penner in the middle, to which he decided to cast a vote for Abby. Why Penner did this has been left to speculation, but in the episode he basically said he was mad at Abby, the vote was a hot mess, and I think he thought they had Scoopin's vote too. Penner likely thought the vote would have been 6-4 with Pete leaving, so why not just throw away his vote, take a pot shot at Abby for fun? While Penner gets the last laugh on Jeff Kent, Abby gets the last laugh on Penner. It's a vicious cycle. You know you have a crazy tribal when over half of the cast has a clear, legitimate reason for being a target, and it really does feel like any of them could go any which way at a drop of a hat.
My name's been thrown around the island the entire time we've merged, so it's probably me.
Oh, and my name's been thrown under the hat as much as Pete's, so's Malcolm's. And Penner and Scoopin. And Lisa's probably on the chopping block, and now Abby too. This is pretty fun, Jeff.
I gotta say, I can't think of a more complicated or entertaining tribal council ever in my time of being a tribal.
And to top it all off, despite 2 idols being revealed, fully on display, neither of them get played. Probst even changes his usual verbiage, and it's a small, subtle detail that I think accurately reflects the feeling of just how off the walls this tribal became.
If anybody has a hidden immunity idol and you want to play it, now is most definitely the time to do so. Nobody playing their idol. Okay.
And that is the end of the list. Wait, no it's not. We're actually just getting started. I have never been happier in my life to say that. Those are the number 10 to number 6 craziest tribal councils in Survivor, but stay tuned because there's more on the way. But before we end part 1 and move on to part 2, I want to open the floor to you guys. What do you think is in the top 5? What are your top 5 craziest tribal councils? Let me and everyone else in the comments down below know so that we can talk about it. And until next time, my name is Peridiam, saying yes, that is an idol in my pants, and no, I won't play it for you. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I will see you in the next one.
And I want this frickin' $1 million in this game. And it's not even $1 million, it's 600 grand by the time Obama takes it. I'm a Game 7 World Series loser. You know, I've played in the biggest games in the world and the worst games in the world, but this just sucks.